So I've seen a lot of y'all hoes just promoting the Hunger Games and saying, oh my god, the times we're living in right now is literally so similar to the Hunger Games. Like Suzanne Collins freaking predicted the future. And yes, okay, there are some similarities to the Hunger Games, but y'all are fake as fuck if you don't realize that this revolution is not the Hunger Games. It's Children of Blood and Bone. Y'all need to read more Black authors. Hey guys, it's Lauren here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this week's Miseducation of Lauren Chi video is going to be about Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. If you guys are familiar with my channel and familiar with literally me at all, I fucking love this series. The first book was amazing and the second book was even better. I have a video actually linked for the second book down below, so you can watch it if you want. I'll link it below, along with all of the other petitions and foundations that you can donate to, because yeah, this isn't a moment, it's a movement. Things are still going on. Do what you can in the links down below. I'll try to find new sources as well for your helpful activist hearts. So yeah, but I decided to do Children of Blood and Bone. First of all, because I have not read much Black fantasy, and that was the first Black fantasy book I've ever read, and it was fantastic. But also because it's literally linked to so many real world problems. Like if you think the Hunger Games relates to what's going on right now, Children of Blood and Bone is gonna shake you. So we're gonna talk about Children of Blood and Bone and realism in revolution. And I really want to talk about what caused the revolution in the book and what started it. So yeah. Oh, I actually haven't even explained the book yet. That's probably something I should do before I get into everything. So, Children of Blood and Bone is basically this Nigerian fantasy novel about this character named Zelly and kind of the rise of a revolution within Nigeria of the Magi, because they were previously oppressed by King Sauron and the royal family and all of the other like light-skinned people who were afraid of the Magi and what they were capable of. They were oppressed and they basically had everything taken away from them, but then there's this one moment when Zelly's village was kind of like bombed and destroyed by the government, and at that point Zelly goes on this quest in order to bring magic back to her people, because magic was taken away a while ago for a reason that no one knows, but the magic was taken away from her people after King Sauron kind of came into power, and because of that Zelly wanted to get the magic back in order to empower her people once again, in order to get equality for her people in their country. So yeah, that's basically what the entire book is about. Yeah, obviously this book is about revolution, but it's very connected to real life instances of why people revolutionize, so that's why we're doing this book. That's what's going on, and without further ado, let's just get right into the video. Causes of revolution. We're gonna start off with like literally the most immediate thing ever, and that is the generalization and dehumanization of a people. So King Sauron is obviously like the royal in this book. He is kind of insane, but also has a huge vendetta against the dark-skinned Magi of the country. Here's what happens. So King Sauron, we end up discovering, he has this vendetta against the Magi, but it's because his family, I think his entire family or like a family member of his, was killed by a Magi. Because of that, he vowed to get vengeance on them. And he kind of dedicated his entire rule in order to degrading and oppressing these people, because a person that was one of them ended up killing his family, and because of that incident, he kind of generalized them into this one group of monstrous people who were dead set against the destruction of his own people, which are basically the light-skinned Nigerian non-Magi people. So because of that one incident with his family, he had this vendetta, and he succeeded in kind of isolating and oppressing these people, and succeeded in making everyone else believe that they were less than human, that they were savages, that they didn't deserve equal rights to them. Colorism, things like that, it kind of also played a role in everything in the oppression of these people in this country. The generalization of this group of people helped make it really easy in order to oppress that group of dark-skinned Magi who were originally seen as benevolent and gifted by the gods, and definitely someone that should be on the same side as these people. But again, because of one singular incident, there's many prejudices against the people, and they end up being oppressed and put literally at the lowest level, permanent secondhand citizens of the country. That's what happened there. That's how dehumanization and generalization of a race can help lead to the complete oppression and systemic racism against them, like we're seeing today. That's basically how that played out in real life, and that's how it played out in the book. So the next thing, obviously colorism. It's really easy, and this is honestly like one of those things that was missing from the Hunger Games, which is a really important thing that people are forgetting when they make connections between the Hunger Games and between real life. No, this is why Children of Blood and Bone especially is more of a connective fictional revolution that relates to the real life revolution that we're experiencing right now. Colorism plays a huge role in this book, right? Like I mentioned before, the Magi are dark skinned. They have bright silver hair. They literally look way different from the people that are in the ruling class. When you're oppressing and when you're dehumanizing a group of people, it's really easy to do that when those group of people don't look like what may look like normal to you. Obviously, in this case, in our own world, it's white people against dark-skinned people, against other minorities, Asians, Middle Easterns, things like that, Hispanics, all of that. All of us are considered the other, and when you aren't confronted with that as often in America, especially because there is very little diversity in a lot of states, and that's why I'm grateful I grew up in DC. Even with the more diverse areas, there are still like a lot of gentrification and redlining, which doesn't allow certain communities to live with each other. There's a lot of that everywhere still. And yeah, that also plays a role in the whole dehumanization of an entire race and the whole allowing judgments to cloud a certain race. Hopefully that made sense. It's really easy to just dehumanize that race because you don't have as many interactions with them, because you are faced with the criminalization of them on television. It's really easy to put them in a box because they don't look like you. You know, you're just like, oh, I'm not like them. Literally because of the physical attributes, you know? So that's what happens in the book as well. The dark-skinned Magi, is kind of easy to villainize them because first of all, they were dark. There's always this villainization of anything that is dark in society, you know, like black associated with evil, yada, yada, yada. You know, you can't win in society if you're dark skinned. You literally see that across like any sort of civilization ever. Like dark skin consistently oppressed. So in this book, when you see dark skinned Nigerians being oppressed by the light skinned Nigerians, it makes complete sense. It literally connects so well to the real world. So when it comes to dehumanization, it's really easy if you look different, and that brings in colorism. So if you're darker, you're considered less than, and so on and so forth. So following dehumanization and generalization using colorism, there is obviously going to be systemic oppression. What King Saran ended up doing in the book was kind of enforcing higher taxes on people that have already basically lost everything. He even started with a fucking genocide. All right, let's talk about that. Whenever it comes to like, groups of people that a country considers different, there's always some sort of complete elimination of a group. You know, like in America, obviously there was slavery, and then there was Jim Crow. They killed the leaders of the movement in the 60s, the Japanese internment camps, and immigration policies. There's always some way in which they try to like weed out how many people that are considered different are allowed into their own country or allowed to live as actual human beings because of the color of their skin. And it's really easy to do that if you put them in a place where they kind of need more from you than you really need from them. That was a bit unclear. What I meant was where you have these like underprivileged people that definitely don't look like you at your mercy. Like for example, like even after slavery, if you don't have a stance of power, like if you're starting from the bottom and trying to rise up, it's even harder to rise up because you don't look like those people, and they know that, and they know that you need them in order to rise up. That's what I meant, but I hope that was clearer than what I said before. And once the Magi lost their powers, they kind of lost their leverage in the Children of Blood and Bone world. Like they had to adjust to like living as like normal human beings. And when they lost their magic, it was at the same time that King Saran sent his troops in order to kill all the Magi in Zeli's village, including Zeli's mother. That's basically what happened there. Genocide plays a huge role in trying to oppress these people, and the genocide of black people has been continued for fucking like 400 years, people. 400 years. Yeah, when you kill off a whole group of leadership, a whole group of people that know your culture, it's even harder to stabilize, and therefore you're even more dependent on the system that is literally oppressing you. Zeli was basically screwed in the book up until the point when she decided to revolutionize. Yeah, genocide also plays a huge role into all of this, especially when they do genocide in a way where they're saying it's what's best for the country. The complete decimation of this group of people that aren't like us because they're criminals. Like, look at how they look. They literally look like monsters, you know? Stuff like that. It all plays in with each other. Back to systemic oppression. So King Saran, he basically enforces these heavy taxes on the people they literally already did a genocide on, and the genocide of all of their Magi people. He makes them live in literally the worst parts of society. He doesn't allow them to live lawfully alongside the other light-skinned Nigerians. They have to live in their own like small villages that don't have as easy access to food and resources and ways in order to live successfully and be a really active participant and powerful participant in their own government and in their own country. There's that. There's the routine checks and over-policing of Zeli's village, because that's another thing. Police. We already know about the police. But in this book, the police play a huge role in the fact that it kind of triggered Zeli in wanting to go on this road in order to bring magic back to her people once again, because at the very beginning of the book, the police come and they start trashing her village, and they come again even after Zeli leaves and trash it some more in order to look for suspicious characters, you know, criminals. Basically, like, there's over-policing, there's increased taxes.
That does not mean that tax cuts in our own country are good for people. Just an FYI, it's just in this book, taxes are not particularly good for the underprivileged. Back to the video.
Like, Zeli literally got so many odd looks for her hair, she had to like cover it up whenever she went into town, so that way the cops wouldn't be called on her. Systemic oppression, y'all. Systemic oppression. All of this wouldn't be possible unless you built up this situation in which you are felt like you have to fear this person that may not look like you or may not act like you. None of this stuff would be allowed in a government unless you played on the fear of the people. And that's what King Saran did. He was like, look at how this one Magi killed like my family member. Look at how they did that. That's what they can do to you. And because of that, the people didn't protest, didn't see anything wrong with the genocide and the consistent oppression of the Magi in their society. And because of that fear that we saw in Americans, like considering like the war on drugs, you know, like the super criminal and things like that, because of all of those terms they put on Black people, and because of the media exposure that Black arrest got on the news, that all also played into the same kind of thing that we saw in Children of Blood and Bone. The fear factor, the whole fear on sight thing. And that's the same thing that you see in real life. Again, the connections here. Another cause of revolution, and basically a reason for which a group of Magi, dark-skinned Magi, are as oppressed as they are. And it's because, again, I mentioned before, their magic was literally taken away. The magic, I feel like, to me, represents the sort of like ancestral roots that Africans had before they came to this country, and it literally made them not be able to speak their own language to each other because they mixed up people from different groups in Africa, and they literally wouldn't allow them to read. Taking away that power, taking away that kind of feeling of belonging and that sense of purpose, especially since the Magi in the book, their magic was literally given to them by the gods. So like once you lose that connection to the gods, and once you lose genocide of the older generation, you're left with nothing. All of a sudden you're cut away from the thing that made you feel this sense of belonging, this sense of power. You're cut away from all of that, and you're basically left with this hopeless feeling, left at the mercy of this oppressive government. That's basically another cause for revolution, because once all that is taken away from you, there is that anger, that righteous anger you feel. Eventually all of that leads to revolution. So yeah, that's the causes of revolution. Now let's lead to how you exactly revolutionize, which we also see in the book. First of all, the youth. The youth tend to lead. And by the youth, I mean basically people from their 30s to their teens. Like even now throughout this entire, the George Floyd incidents and all the other incidents of police brutality, you see the youth coming up to arms. I've seen it within my own city. I've seen it nationally. You can count on the youth to pull up to these protests, pull up in order to cause long-lasting change, pull up in order to sign petitions, in order to donate, in order to bring awareness to certain issues. The youth causes change, and that's why every single fucking YA dystopian stars a teenager bringing about change. Once you're an adult, some part of you becomes complacent, some part of you becomes cynical, but the youth tends to bring life to the movement, and that is exactly what we're seeing today with everything that's going on. We pull up, we show up. For us personally, in our own real world, we see that in even like our own civil rights leaders in the 60s. That's one thing they don't really teach you in elementary school, along with many other things that we're not going to get into because I refuse to be angry at this exact moment. But they don't bring up the fact that Martin Luther King didn't even hit the age of 40. They don't bring up the fact that Malcolm X didn't hit the age of 40. They don't bring up the fact that Hampton, like a Black Panther leader, one of the only leaders left after like everyone else died, he was 21 when he was killed by the police. Everyone else, like Medgar, Malcolm, and Martin, they all died before they hit the age of 40. That's fucking young, bro. The youth bring life to the movement. The youth tend to be the leaders. And I know I'm basically calling like millennial age people the youth, but you know what I'm saying. That's before the age in which you start to lose faith in humanity and you kind of become complacent and you're just like, these gosh darn kids, you can't change anything. I'm just gonna sit here and play chess and try to be happy with my little chessboard. Let me not go on people like that. You know, I feel like the youth, we are the power in these kind of things. And so we definitely see that in this book. Zelly has that anger, that generational anger that we all tend to feel. Zelly's mother was literally killed in front of her own eyes by the police, the same people that were ruling the country. So she had a lot of that anger pent up. But once the police came again and destroyed her village and threatened everything that she held dear, everything she had left, she was mobilized. And she mobilized her brother, and she mobilized even like the royal family youth. She mobilized Ahmaud, who actually grew up privileged as fuck, but because of the fact that she knew what her family was doing was wrong, and because of the fact that Zelly was such a fierce woman that she could like literally stand behind. Oh, another thing, Black women tend to head these movements. There have been so many Black women on television saying the facts, leading the movements, holding the megaphones, telling people how it is. And the fact that y'all are ignoring Black women, that's another realistic fact of this book. Black women lead these movements. Black women are the driving force of these movements, and that is on that. That is on that. Moving on from that though, Ahmaud kind of representing the youth from the side of the oppressor. The passion of those that are oppressed tend to move the oppressor. That's the youth momentum. That's the fact that we are the people that are going to bring about change. It's going to be us. Another thing about starting a movement, you utilize what you've learned from before. So there have obviously been endless riots that have happened because of Black Lives Matter and because of the fact that the government has oppressed Black people in our own country. I'm talking about the real world right now. You know, there's Rodney King riots, there's the Trayvon Martin riots, and there are the riots from now. And there are plenty of riots that happened in the 60s, and even during slavery, the slave riots that led to the Civil War. Riots get shit done, bro. We tried the peaceful protesting, right? We tried taking a knee. That didn't work. So you did the riots, which we've also seen in the past. A lot of what we're seeing now with the protests are very similar to what we've seen in a decade before now, from like freaking like 60 decades before now, because I'm just now realizing it's been 60 decades since the 60s. Anyway, like one thing that we've learned in present day that we didn't learn in the 60s is the fact that if you have a very prominent leader in your movement, they tend to fucking die, disappear, or be imprisoned. Case in point, the United fucking States of America. There are instead different organizations, you know, like foundations. There are lawyers working in the background. There are mobilizers that are covering our faces. There are protesters. There's every single like machine, every single cog in the machine that's working, but it's a machine, you know? There isn't just gonna be one face. There are a lot of things that we're adapting from the past that we're using now. In Children of Blood and Bone, Zelly, she's chasing the magic of her ancestors. That's what's been used before in order to empower people. So she decided that they needed it again in order to be empowered, in order to end this reign of terror on her people, bring balance once again to their society. So that's why she's chasing the magic. That's what she's doing there, and she's listening to her teacher, who I forgot the name of, but she was a badass woman. Her teacher, who was also a Black woman, just saying, taught her how to fight and taught her how to use a staff and kind of just fight and defend herself. And then she also told her to go on her quest. So it's listening to the people that came before you and utilizing what you've learned from like the past in order to become successful in the present. That's another thing that happens when you start a revolution. And the final point about starting a revolution is the fact that the revolution cannot be colonized. You can form coalitions. Basically, Zelly with her brother ends up kind of joining forces with Arbery, who is obviously the daughter of King Saran that I mentioned before, and then they also end up joining forces with more magi and more like people that they didn't originally have before, but are definitely willing to join the fight. So yeah, there is strength in numbers, obviously, and especially if you do want to make an impactful change. But you really do need to bring people from the other side onto your side in order to win. However, that does not mean y'all gotta be like besties or some shit. That's on partly I'm happy about the fact that Zelly and Anon weren't a couple in the book. Y'all know what I'm talking about if y'all read the book. Anon's kind of a bitch. We're not gonna I'm glad that Zelly is not gonna be like let him walk all over her or something. She's like a bitch. You're not helping. You've literally made the issue worse. That's what I like about Zelly. She's an angry boss black woman and I adore that. I love to see it. And yeah, that's pretty much all the points I really have to make about how realism is shown in this fictional revolution and how it connects to our own world itself. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, you should like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on my social medias. They're all linked down below. I honestly don't know what book I'm gonna do next. I might do The Hate You Give. We will see, because I still haven't read that book yet, and I would like to read it before the end of June, which is basically the second Black History Month this year, because we needed that shit. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!